Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Malika Mridul, and I will be the host of today's webinar on behalf of TNV Academy. For this webinar, we are glad to have Mr. Ajay Bajpai with us as the guest speaker. The topic with which he is here today with all of us is client application inquiry form inputs. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Ajay Bajpai, has done his bachelor's in engineering in metallurgy. He is also a lead auditor in ISO standards 9001, 14001, 45001, 37001, 22000, 27001, 13485, 22301, and 50001, respectively. He has an industrial experience of more than 15 years as an implementer of management system standards and 25 plus years in the field of auditing and training. He has been imparting training through the medium of webinars, seminars, live sessions, online and offline mode to a number of organizations, entrepreneurs, and individuals on various topics related to ISO terminologies and conducted 4,000 plus man days of third party audits globally. That's enough from my side. I request Mr. Ajay Bajpai now to please take over and start the webinar.
Thanks, Malika, for the brief and good introduction. Today, the subject which we are discussing on is inquiry or application form. This is known with both the names, and the main purpose is to initiate a good certification process, because this is where we get the information and details about the client, and the certification body team both coordinate with each other to start and initiate a good certification process, which would ultimately lead to a good final certification with value addition. So I start here with the discussion. What are the inputs coming from the clients and how the team is going to capture them? What is the understanding of the team? So we have to discuss all that in the webinar today. So first of all, we have to give training to the team who is the marketing team and the team who is on to the client side at times, because both should be on the same wavelength so that the understanding level is clear and both of them give and collect the information for moving on. Next point coming into this is the, when the receipt of the application form or inquiry form is there with the marketing team or the BA managers or with the sales team, they need to review what all has been filled into the application form, particularly the scope. Scope is one of the very important point, and since this inquiry form is the initial stage of the certification process. So scope needs to be filled in properly, captured properly, reviewed properly, and verified, and decision should be taken on what are the technical requirement of the scope, so that a good grip is starting from the first stage where we know what is the scope, what is the activity, what are the products, what are the processes, what are the units to be covered, what may be the countries to be covered for the same unit, what states to be covered, what location to be covered. So this is all is going to define into the scope. Also, when we receive the application form, we need to review the applicability of the standard supply. That means at times the client is not aware of what standard, how much it is going to be applicable. For example, when we talk of FSMS, there are different codes A to J. Client is not aware of those many details, but they just apply for certification. Or in case of a standard where design is not totally applicable or not applicable, or service activity which is applicable or not applicable. So at this stage of the receipt of the application form and review activity, it is important that we are able to decide on to the applicability of the standard applied, and needs to look into these filled information correctly. If there is any ambiguity, if they are incorrectly written, because sometimes the client or consultants or business associate will try to write so many things into application form which may not be correctly covered under the scope of the certification, and they may not follow the rules and regulation as per the technical codes of the various accreditation board, IAF, NACE, and so on. So this is a very important parameter here. Then what happens? Review the certification standard version related input. This I have already discussed, but again I am emphasizing. As for example, I have told in the beginning that yes, 27001 has been revised recently. So whenever any revision is there, old and new standard coexist together. So that needs to be understood by the client and by the marketing team and by the application review team, that what standard they have applied. Sometimes what happens, just the standard is going to be obsolete or standard is going to be no more valid. For example, October 2025, the 27001 2013 standard will be invalid. So somebody is applying in the month of July, August 2025, needs to see it very clearly, carefully, and our team needs to be trained on that. If they have applied for the old version of the standard of 2013, there are going to be problems because the standard will immediately revise. So their certification, even if it is issued, it will become invalid after 1 day, 2 day, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 1 month, depending upon the limit, as close as to the October 2025 for the revision of ISO 27001 2022. This is applicable for all standards because standards keeps on revising within the period of 6, 8, 9, 10 years most of the times. So whenever the application form, inquiry form is filled, this version needs to be clearly indicated, and our team who is conducting the application review, the contract review, they should look at it very carefully. What codes are applicable? For example, if it is a food safety certification, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So we need to understand what is the applicability. Then these application forms, inquiry forms are mostly available all on our website. Most of the certification bodies will have the application form on the website so that the client can directly download it and apply for certification. But the question is updated. In last 3 years, 3 decades, our team has seen that there are problems in this updation into various certification bodies. Accreditation boards at times raise problems because the application forms gets on revised depending upon the situation, depending upon the version, depending upon the input coming from internal audit and external audit. So the moment application form is revised, it needs to be updated on the website of the certification body so that the client is going to fill the correct application form. Because you see, sometimes there is a huge organization, multi-locational organization, multi-country organization. Once they fill a wrong application form, it is a hell lot of exercise to get another application form filled after a revision, and there's a lot of confusion, misunderstanding starts from this level, as I said in the beginning. So it is good to have the correct application form with the client and filled correctly after the teams are trained. Teams of client, teams of certification body, teams of business associate, teams of consultants as applicable if there needs to be trained on the applicability of the client's application form. So that's the background, and it is very important to lead us to the certification because this is the beginning of the certification process, as I said. And if we do a good beginning, the finishing is always done in a much better way. So we go further. So we are getting into the planning activity. Everything we say into certification is planning. PDCA, plan, do, check, and act. So applicability, we have discussed what is applicable, what is applicable to the client, understood. But now comes the question of non-applicability. A client may not be doing many things. For example, he may not be a design company. He may not have external providers. He may not have property belonging to customer or external providers. Identification and traceability may not be applicable to his operation, his manufacturing, his service application. So this needs to be understood clearly by the teams, which I said earlier, and the correct information needs to be filled and provided to the certification body for a review, so that the planning of audit, we'll discuss further also, is always based upon how the applicability and non-applicability are identified, understood, documented by the company, and they are correctly filled into the application form. So these terms are little technical. So many of you may need to little bit go into details if they want to understand it. However, we have conducted a lot of webinars earlier in past on all these subjects. So one can look into our YouTube channel and get more knowledgeable by reading it. Then what happens? Validation and periodic revalidation. This was called in earlier standard as a special process. Many auditors call it, uh, you know, uh, a special process today also, because the term has become very, very popular. This means the results cannot be verified by the next process. For example, vending is a process. Welding results will be shown after particular passage of time, maybe weeks, maybe months. Painting is a special process. It needs a validation, revalidation. So if this is applicable or not applicable, that needs to be identified. There's a lot of confusion into this particular activity, so I thought I will specifically address this. There are Factory Act related requirements. So the client, when filling the application form, needs to address these requirements, because they ultimately lead to statutory and regulatory requirements as well, which I have said here, but they are linked, both are linked at times. So they need to be filled up into the application form, and the review team needs to understand that. Review the group related information as applicable. We have seen many cases in last few decades where this information has created problems when certification was getting finalized, or stage 2 is being conducted, or even the decisions are being taken. Client is looking for a group certification, or he wants to cover different locations, but initially when he has filled the application, he has not mentioned that. So this information needs to be very, very clearly written into the application form. He may have many groups, he may have many activity. He may go for certification of a particular scope in a particular group, and may not at the same time. But what he is looking for today as a certification scope needs to be clarified with respect to his company activity, and everything starts from there. We also need to review the company specific information as applicable. Some clients have very specific information about their operations, their activity, their locations, these processes. There are 10 units, somewhere this is applicable, this is not applicable. In 4 more units, this is applicable, somewhere this is not applicable. So all this needs to be understood with respect to a company specific requirement. And maybe at times when we are conducting the application review and audit planning is going on, this information, if not specifically addressed, the audit plan, traveling activities, language problems and all, sometimes are seen into stage 1 and stage 2 audit at times. So we have seen that. So we need to be very clear. Then review the statutory and regulatory related information linked to, again, the Factory Act. I said at times, what are the requirements? We have conducted a seminar on statutory regulatory recently. One can go to our YouTube and view and learn more and more. But yes, this needs to be documented, defined into the application form, so that the application review teams takes decision while they are going for audit planning, selection of audit team, and so on. Review the client final customer related information. Sometimes the client's client, or sometimes we call it final customer, have got some more specific requirement. For example, we are going for a IMS certification, where client is also going for IATF certification. Okay, so they will have a specific requirement to be addressed. So if they are mentioned into the application form, the review team will understand, yes, these are the specific requirements. Or in case of food safety in a particular country, they may have a specific requirement. In India, we have got FSSAI, some other country will have some other requirement, or requirement related to FSSC, BRC, if it is the IMS certification, related to a particular client. So if that is understood and if the client is going to make a mention and the same is reviewed by the team, the next part of the planning becomes simple for the certification process. All right, we go further. Concepts are made clear on, I will say, all locations. Many companies, many clients, many situations will have different locations. So we need to understand what is this location, what activity is going on. Somewhere it is only a marketing location, somewhere it is a head office, somewhere it is a site which we'll discuss later, but sometimes the site may be a very critical activity. So these concepts need to be understood by the teams. Okay, teams, again I would emphasize teams mean the client, the trainer, the consultant, the business associate, the application review team, they all need to understand till the decision making thing, I would say. And then applicability is understood for sites. Many organizations, depending upon their scope and activity, for example, very clear example can be a construction activity. Construction activities will have different sites, site 1, site 2, site 3. There are installation also in case of machinery and equipment at times where large installations are going on. Large designs and installation are interrelated at times. So if this is understood at the very beginning, then planning becomes simple and further audit plan and audit selection and conduct of audit is clear with respect to the applicability of the sites. Then when we are talking of the documentation stage, what to document? When a client is preparing themselves, what to document into in his own system with respect to what all we have discussed so far, and how that information will go into the application inquiry form, and how they will conduct the internal audit of this activity, how second party will be having an impact, how third party will have the impact, and audit process is understood with respect to the application and inquiry form with respect to the points which we have discussed so far. Again, it is very important. How to document is again very important. Sometimes we go for a stage one audit, we see the document, the SOP, the work instructions, the various checklists of the organization, but we see that they are not aligned with what has been filled into the application and inquiry form, because application form has got a requirement to define what is the level of documentation they have done and what are the documents they have. Then how the audit is conducted is understood. This is applicable for all this IA, SPA and third party audit with respect to the inquiry form, which may be provided, may not be provided at various levels, but there are auditors who will ask for the information which has been provided into the inquiry form because they found there is a mismatch between the information provided to them by the application review or contracting team when they are conducting the audit. There is a mismatch. So then they will try to understand what was documented and how there is a mismatch so that the corrective actions can be taken for future improvements. Then we again talk of training. How to review? How to review the application form? We have hundreds and thousands of cases where the applications have been reviewed, but there were gaps found. We have again retrained the teams globally to see that the review is done to find out, for example, we talk of a EMS certification, Environment Management System certification. The application form clearly wants to know what kind of chemicals, hazardous materials they have, how much they have, because there are quantities which make impact onto the further audit planning. There are decisions taken by the audit planning team. If there are hazardous chemicals, materials which are not permitted, the legal licenses are limited or not available. So this all needs to be taken to them. Then if they are reported, that training on to how to understand, that is very, very important. We always say understand what is written into the application form. What is the concept? What is the theme? A client who is very, very serious, we can understand the seriousness of the client and associate from the application form itself. When we read through the information given, a serious, a knowledgeable, and intelligent client will give most of the good information. In fact, they will call the marketing team, sometimes the senior managers, they will ask, sir, this information we do not know what to write. You have asked for mandate, the number of employees working into the company. What does that mean, sir? What is the temporary permanent employee column? So they will ask and understand, because that all makes a impact onto the costing of the certification, into the mandate selection, and so on. Small things are very, very important for taking a decision, and the client will also be on the same wavelength as we are as an application reviewer, as an auditor, as we move on. So now the training of team is done on these areas of concept, review, and so on. And now we go further. Now we are going into the implementation. The planning has been done, the concepts are clear. So we need to ask the question from the implementers. We need to ask a lot of questions from the marketing team. If I am a application reviewer, or at times if I am a certification decision maker, I have to ask him what was the scope, why this scope or this information were not given in earlier. If we are at a stage one audit, we'll ask all these questions. What are the processes which need validation? What are the temporary permanent size? What is the applicability? What is the non-applicability? So a lot of questions are asked. Then application is being reviewed. I will always say review, because application review is conducted at various stages. Whenever we are going into the certification process, application information is always reviewed. Documentation is understood, what they have documented, what they have submitted. There are clients who will submit a lot of information when the inquiry form is filled. What all they will submit? They will submit their legal requirement, they will submit their documentation at time which is applicable with respect to, for example, food certification, whether they are FSSAI approved or not, whether their applicability is there into the scope or not, whether they have documented procedures, whether it has been approved or not. All these things needs to be written down in some way or the other into the application form. Then we are all into a process where internal audit reports are seen. Internal audit is conducted of application and inquiry form. So we need to see that yes, they are implemented, and internal audit is reporting on them correctly, so that further mistakes are not taking place. Review external audit reports on application and inquiry. When a certification body is having the surveillance audit from the accreditation board, those reports are there. It is equally applicable for a client, where sometimes the second party audits are conducted, sometimes the client's audit are conducted. So they all come into the category of external audit. So has that external audit reviewed and looked at application and inquiry? Have they tried to relate it so that the improvement is brought about into the further review process of application? Then a summary of what all we have discussed and what all is done is prepared, and it needs to be updated for further improvement into system. And then performance monitoring of this process of application and inquiry review is done. We always see and review why the information is not provided, why the information is not filled, why some information is handwritten, why it is typed. We go into the details of this. Then the performance monitoring is done so that we know how intelligent, how active, how knowledgeable client is that. Today he is going for one standard. If he is handled correctly by the marketing team, he will go for 3, 4 standards in future. We had hundreds of such cases. If we are able to do this process correctly, the client is so convinced that he will go for many certification later. He always remains with a particular certification body because they are asking questions, they are reviewing, they are able to guide them at times through their stage 1 and stage 2 audit to a limited extent. So once we do that, we come to analysis and future action, which is always an integral part of any activity, any review actions. So we need to study what are the objectives of the application and inquiry review. Objective is very clear as we have discussed. Criteria is clear with respect to standard, revisions, and other supporting technical standard if they are there. Then there are targets always, which needs to be discussed in small groups and cross-functional activities. We always say involve more and more team members as applicable. Don't crowd it into the meeting, but relevant team members, which we call always call cross-functional team or small group, depending upon the client or CB or BA or consultant angle, we look at it. And then we monitor the implementation of this application inquiry review process. Monitoring is one of the integral part as we have been discussing earlier and in earlier slides also. We keep on monitoring how good we are following this process because this is a guide to the certification process. Certification process is what? It starts from the time when the client thinks of going for certification and finishes at when he is awarded with the certificate and he gives feedback of the entire process to the auditors on auditors and certification body and so on. So it needs to be implemented throughout with the support of application and inquiry process review. Then at the client end and at the certification body end, internal audit needs to be conducted effectively by a trained and deemed competent team who understand the importance of application and inquiry process. Sometimes we have seen into the client, into the CV's application implementation, the audit is conducted by a auditor who have really not having in-depth knowledge of this process. He is not having a checklist, a guidance document for application inquiry process, internal audit review and objectives. So how he will conduct a good audit? Good audit means a value added audit. We want to get value addition done through internal audits because the whole theme of ISO management system standard is what? Value additions. So if auditors are trained for this application inquiry, status, analysis and future actions, they will bring value addition by conduct of effective internal audit and their knowledge is updated and they are calibrated from time to time as the standards are being revised, as the accreditation board requirements are being revised. So they conduct internal audit in line of all this. Then what happens? We have conducted a detailed internal audit. So a lot of audit reports are available with us, a lot of observation sheets are available with us. There are non-conformities, observation 10, 15, 20, whatever are there depending upon the type and size of the organization. There are 50 units in a company, so there will be 100 internal audit report sheets maybe depending upon the situation. So all that will now go for a management review, effective review of AI objectives. Now we are focusing everything on application inquiry objectives. So how these results have been there, which has come out of internal audit. Internal audit of AI process has been done. So there are 2 NCs, 5 observations, 6 area for improvement, 10 notes or whatever way the report is being prepared, available for conducting an effective management review by involving the team. We always say the team should be involved depending upon what management review committee has been established by the client or by the certification body. They review this performance and they decide what actions to be taken in future so that our AI objectives are further improved upon, our AI policies are further improved upon, our application inquiry becomes a robust system and it brings about improvements on day and day as we conduct the internal audit because it is an ongoing process. So these minutes are made of review meeting and they need to be implemented and monitored for further actions. Who is supposed to do what to see that AI objectives are further improved upon, the mistakes are further controlled, the scope is further fine-tuned, applicability and non-applicability is further understood, the units, the groups to be involved, the temporary sites, the permanent sites, they are all addressed, covered and audited effectively internally and externally. And all this is implemented as decided into the management review meeting with respect to responsibility and authority given to the respective authority and responsibility of the person in the client or the business associate or the auditor or whosoever is supposed to implement. So this monitoring is going on for further actions. When we do all this, ultimate aim is to bring improvement into the application inquiry status that will come by following, as we discussed earlier also, PDCA, plan, do, check and act. Plan, do, check and improve. The Deming cycle, the Deming circle. They follow the management principle, follow the clause requirements of the application review of 17021 and supported by 19011, which is the Bible for the internal auditors and also for external auditors. Once we do that, improvements are deemed to happen. They happen automatically as a byproduct of this process. Once this happens, then we go for certification. So TNV certification private limited approved by Exemplar Global for accredited trainings. We have got 80 plus training courses which are accredited by Exemplar Global INC, which starts from 19,011, 19,000, 14,000, 45,000. Even we conduct the accredited relation courses, 17021 related courses here. And also here we conduct the certification of 914, 45, 13485, FSMS, and so on under UF accreditation with IAF. Here is the website which can be further studied and there are a lot of information knowledge available to upgrade your knowledge on application inquiry status. Then we have got TNV system certification accredited by IAS with IAF. Here is the website for many certification 914, 45, 22, 37,001. So these are the standards which one can apply and how to apply the knowledge is here. There are various information documents are available which can be downloaded and more knowledge can be enhanced from here. Then the TNV Academy which is conducting these webinars here, Learning Without Limit, this is the website and all our informations are available there. One can upgrade their knowledge. So this is what we have discussed today. This is the base which we have created, how the application form inputs are required, why they are important first of all, and they need to be updated all the time with the inputs of applicability of processes and process and service organization, focusing on scope always. Then applicability, okay, non-applicability needs to be understood very clearly here so that it is jotted down into the application form because it is to be further reviewed by various teams with respect to statutory regulatory requirements, factory act related information, some information which comes from various other certification which is the final customer requirement. They are again put into it. If not put into, the intelligent marketing team will ask the client or the associate so that the further improvements and adherence to the standard certification is being implemented. Then training is another key area. Concepts should be clear. Why application form is filled? What are the important? All these concepts should be made clear, specifically on location, on sites, what to document, the information is given or not, how auditing is to be related with that. If these concepts are clear, then the teams are trained and they do a good job into the application and inquiry form filling and reviewing. Then we are getting into implementation. Ask question is the key word. Many times there are gaps because we don't ask questions. The moment you get a doubt on any information provided, please ask questions. Ask questions by sending a mail, by WhatsApp. There are several methods of asking questions today. So there needs to be asked so that it is being implemented effectively. And marketing team has got a lot of role into it. Then applications are reviewed, documentation information is given, then internal audit performance, external audit, and ultimately the performance monitoring is application inquiry status. Then finally the analysis part comes into the picture, which is very important. But into auditing, we see these are some areas where we found weak. So we want the associates, the clients, the application review teams to get a feel of this, get into this, get a deep dive into this and see that yes, improvements are brought about by effectively implementing the internal audits, the review of the processes, by reviewing the objectives and targets are reviewed in management review meetings, and those minutes with respect to responsibility, authority, and time management plan with respect to targets are implemented effectively. And then the certification. So this is the base for the starting of the certification process. There will be client agreement also later on. We'll discuss that. That is also getting linked to application. But for time being, this is what I had covered. Thank you very much.
If any of the participants has any questions, they can ask now, or in case you don't have any questions, this particular video will be uploaded on our YouTube channel so that you can also ask in comment section. So I would now come to the conclusion of this session. I would sum up as application inquiry consists of seeking information from knowledgeable persons in financial or non-financial roles within the company or outside the company. I am thankful and grateful for Mr. Ajay Bajpai for giving us his valuable time for conducting this webinar. I thank all the participants as well for attending this webinar. And that was it, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to share with you all. Thank you.